All right, welcome to Life on Mars, another episode of the MarsBased podcast. Here we talk technology and entrepreneurship and business and development and whatever you want. So I'm Àlex, I'm the CEO and co-founder of this company, and I'm your host today. And as we announced in the previous episode of the podcast, we are coming back with a different mixed up kind of content and different episodes, and you will see more speakers, but also some speakers repeating more often because some of them have been really highly valued by our audience, and you have told us like, wow, I really learned from this person, I really learned from that person, I really liked it when this episode was with Laura González, for instance. She's come up like 3 times in the podcast, or with Sergio Gago, people who were often in our podcast, maybe 2, 3, 4 times maybe. Which is not that much considering that we've got 36, 37 episodes in every feed of the podcast, but they will be coming more often because right now, as we announced in the previous episode, we'll be choosing the person that we want to interview, the person we want to host, directly linked to the subject or to the topic that we want to cover every week, right? So, you know, in this week in particular, we want to kick off this new season of Life on Mars. We want to bring you back some content because we have been requested a lot that we have also some other talks by other members of the company, right? And in particular, people want to know more about our CTO, Xavi, because he's not a very public person, but he likes to speak in front of the audiences. As a matter of fact, the conversation we are bringing tonight is the appearance of Xavi in our Startup Grind Tech conference, when he was interviewed by Roger Verdalles, who was at the time the chapter director of Startup Grind in Madrid, in a panel with Laura González from Schibsted, who was the responsible of people and recruitment at Schibsted. And in that panel, they conversed about having to hire remote people, remote developers, how to hire them, where to find them, how to manage them, career plans, and whatnot, right? What makes a difference between like a small company like MarsBased and a huge corporation like Schibsted, right? We thought that this contrast would be interesting, and that was one of the panels we had in, I think it was the last Startup Grind conference before we had to obviously postpone our yearly Startup Grind Barcelona conference, Startup Grind Tech conference, that we call it because it's more focused around tech. And we had to cancel our, we had scheduled a 4th edition of the conference for May 2020. Of course, that had to be postponed to this year. And we decided, okay, let's just cancel it permanently for now. Let's see when things come back. And we hope that we'll be able to bring it back. But I'm not very positive that we'll be coming back with the conference next year, because as I am recording this, it's mid-September, and in order to plan a conference like this, you need to have at least 6 months of preparation, right? And right now we are in a huge mess, so to speak. I explained that in our previous episode. We've got a lot of things going on, clients selling the company, we got like a person just left the company, we got a couple on paternity leave, we're launching like 3 projects at the same time. We're starting a project with one super amazing top tier football club. We are renewing all the contracts with our clients and so on and so forth. So there's quite a lot of stuff to do. Our headspace is not the right one to organize a conference, even less so if we don't know how we will be in March or April next year, because right now there's a lot of restrictions in place, right? That being said, actually, I'm usually the person who speaks in conferences and in events and so on and so forth, but actually, Xavi has got a great point in this video. You will notice it. I mean, as a CTO, it's his first job as a CTO. For those who don't know Xavi, he had been lead developer and other engineering management roles in some consultancies in Barcelona. And we actually started more or less in the same kind of companies, in some big 4 companies, and then transitioned to other smaller companies, where random trivia, Xavi and Jordi ended up working together. Jordi who was the CTO of his previous company, hired Xavi as the lead developer of the company, right? But it's his first role as a CTO. Of course, Xavi has managed people before, has dealt with really big projects, has managed projects as big as in his previous company. He had to manage, national newspapers, some platforms for the Catalan government. I think he even went on to work for FC Barcelona in his previous company, and so on and so forth. So he's very experienced, and obviously, the work that he's been doing at MarsBased in the 7.5 years, it's been phenomenal. Having worked for super big clients like ADNOC or Everest or La Liga Professional de Football or Real Madrid or HP right now, so you name it, right? So these super big projects that require great architecture, scalability, and so on and so forth. It's all, a product of Xavi's mind and knowledge. That was one thing that I wanted to point out. The other one is that we are, effectively speaking, going back to offline events for Startup Grind Barcelona. I mentioned that our conference is not coming back because for those who you don't know it, we host a monthly event in Barcelona, and which will be going offline after 18 months. But we're not bringing back the conference. So there are two separate things. The regular monthly event in which we interview somebody relevant in the world of startups and investment and innovation, so on and so forth. And the conference, where we have this 1.5 day compound of a lot of different panels and fireside chats and even some keynotes in a bigger venue. We host up to 1,000 people, but it happens once a year. This is not coming back anytime soon, but the monthly events, we're really excited about going back to them because we miss the people, we miss the community. Startup Grind and MarsBased, at least in Barcelona, they're super intertwined. You cannot explain one without the other. We've met some clients there. We've met the developers there. We also host and sponsor the event. So we're the company, effectively speaking, running the event. So, and we know that we're creating an impact in the ecosystem, right? We have introduced people who went on and co-founded companies. We have introduced startups to investors who ended up investing. I have been investing in some of the companies I've met through Startup Grind, and so on and so forth, right? So we need to have this event back after 18 months with the strictest measures and social distancing and masks and, very limited networking and what have you. So it will be sort of a watered down version of what we used to have. But of course, we cannot yet have events with 150 people, which is what we used to have in our regular events back in the day prior to, February 2020 when it was our last event. That being said, just a quick introduction as to what's been going on MarsBased. Remember that I said that for every episode right now, before we go into the content, there's going to be a little bit of a longer intro to give more context about what we are working on, what do we need, maybe things you ought to know, and maybe we'll be talking about our capacity or whether we're opening new roles for more developers and what have you, right? A couple of things that you need to know. First of all, is that we'll have some availability. So we're freeing up some developers earlier than expected. We're usually booked out for 4 to 6 months because our clients work on retainer and we usually have got long-term contracts. But as I mentioned in the last episode, we decided to stop working for our biggest client. A couple of our clients are getting acquired and it's unclear as to whether we will be working for them or not any longer. And, one project finished earlier than expected. So, and we also hired a few people this year, 3-4 people. So if you have any project you want to send our way, happy to take a look. Usually we're looking for at least 3 months of engagement and then ongoing contract for ongoing development for Ruby, for Angular, for Node.js, or for React, which are usually the kind of frameworks that we are using in our project. That's one thing. Another thing that's really cool, and I wanted to mention because it's taken the company by storm, is this tool called Linear. None of us had ever heard of this tool. Basically, it's a project management tool it's got all the good things of task lists and project management tools and GitHub and Trello, so all these kind of views, and it's pleasant to the eye, so it's not ugly or clunky like more corporate software. And it's taken the company so by storm that we have moved all of our projects to this in the span of 2 days, right? We're moving all of our project management there. We're moving HR, all the integrations we had with Jira, and we're moving it there. We're even the boards we have to manage the company, the founders, or kind of like the leadership team will be moved there. We're considering moving all the sales infrastructure and tech stack to Linear. Check it out. I mean, it's not a sponsor. It's a tool that we are super pleasantly surprised by. It's called linear.app, linear.app. I haven't yet tested it myself. I want to have some first-hand impressions, but Jordi, our CEO, fucking liked it, fucking loved it. We migrated pretty much everything in a couple of days. And it looks like that's the kind of tool that we really needed as a company. In order to work internally with our clients, we still work with other tools, with whatever they have, right? But it's funny because it was 1 year ago that we migrated everything to Jira. Previously, we had been using other tools, and like it was a combination of Basecamp, and we have Harvest and Forecast. And for some projects, we're using Trello because the client wanted so, or internally we were using GitHub projects. And for 1 year, it was really good that we used Jira. It's a really great tool. We love the improvement that Jira had, undergone in the last several years, because back in 2014, I remember it was like clunky and ugly and slow, and it was not well integrated. And it seems that, Atlassian has profited from buying Trello and learning a few things from startups and product, right? It's been a great year, but I think we have moved everything to Linear right now. I will be updating you on how this is going. What else? Another cool thing that we might be speaking about in the next episodes is that we are auditing someone else's code. We did something that was really cool, and I think this can really be an extremely interesting content for future podcast episodes. Is that whenever we go into a new project, I remember I told you last week that we were starting a project for a top tier football club, and for Americans, the right football, not yours. Jokes aside, the one you play with the feet, not with the hands, because it's called football for a reason. Anyways, so back to topic, is that we, every time we go into a project that has been built by somebody else, be it like internal team or an external provider, and so on and so forth, we audit the code. That's one of the first things we do. I think that's something extremely positive, and that everybody should do that. Because if you start working right away, you're going to encounter so many things, and you're going to be held responsible for things that are entirely not your fault, right? So if the first thing you do, that's something we've done with this project, because we've seen like lots of legacy code, React and Ruby just mixing like the same files, no clear distinction between model view and controller, and it looked like the previous provider of this project had learned React and by doing, and so you can see no style guides, like so many things are messing this project. And we said, if we don't say anything, we start working right away, this is going to explode sometime soon. There's a time bomb project, right? So even if the client really wanted us to hit the ground running, be really fast, start producing, because the project has got several delays prior to our involvement, we had to pause and say, like, look, this is what we found. I think it was a great move, and the client really appreciated it, that we came up with a list of things that were like really wrong, and they posed threats to the project. They would be incurring in very big risks if we had taken the projects. And I think that creates some alignment between the client and us. And we will be able to come in the future and say, like, look, we're going to take so much longer in this feature because of these reasons we listed in the past, right? So no surprises later down the road. Here's what you need to know about the project. If you run an agency, if you're a freelancer, I really recommend that you folks do this, because it's really positive. Every time we do it, clients are pleasantly surprised, and even if we lost some time there that we should have spent perhaps developing, I think it's a great mid to long-term investment. And I think that's all. That's everything I wanted to cover today. I'll let you with the video. I hope you enjoy this conversation. We have been reusing some content from the past. We will not be doing these anymore because we're kind of like, it's not like we're running out of them, but we want to start with the new season. But I really wanted to bring up this episode because a few people said like, hey, we want to hear more from your co-founders. We want to hear from Xavi, the CTO, especially because, being a development company makes all the sense in the world. And I think it's also positive for us for hiring and for, proving our expertise in certain topics, like in this case, hiring and managing developers remotely. So I'll leave you with it. Let's go with the video.
I wanted to shoot the first question to Xavi. We have heard a lot about MarsBased in the last day and a half, and I was wondering how such an amazing company is dealing with very specific details on one specific process, which is hiring. How do you do that at MarsBased?
Well, our hiring strategy is an inbound hiring strategy. What we basically do is we have several sites, several platforms where we post our job offers. But then what we really do is to put a lot of effort in content creation in our website, and in our blog. What we do is to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort writing content that it's going to be useful for our candidates to know us and to build trust with them. For example, we have content explaining how do we work, what technologies do we use because we are a development agency. We also speak about all the perks that our employees will receive working at MarsBased. We also explain all the activities, the get-togethers that we do as a team, company retreats, our philosophy. That way, we are building trust with the employee, with the candidate before of the interview itself. And this is a good way for us to attract talent and to seduce the candidates. And for now, it has worked pretty well to us. We haven't had any problem finding the top talent in the areas that we do at our company.
I love that. It's kind of a pre-training. If any of you guys is looking for a job, this is a good way to actually get to know the company way beforehand they actually hire you. It's kind of cool.
Yes. I want to add that all of our employees, of current employees, after speaking with them, they have said to us that they have read at least a couple or three of our posts in our blog before even applying for a job position at MarsBased, which is something that makes us very, very proud of our work.
That's awesome. And we are like entering, I don't know if you noticed, but we have a completely different sizes of companies here. And how is compared to what Mark Xavier just said, is how different is the managing on the hiring process? How do you do it? What is the first step on a big company like Schibsted?
So we have more defined processes in terms of hiring, but I need to mention we are not hiring remote people in Schibsted. That makes a difference.
Okay.
But we are hiring remotely, and most of the times then we bring them over, or we have diversified teams. It means that we have different people in different locations. So we have 4 international hubs, which is Barcelona, London, Oslo, and Stockholm. And different teams have different people in different locations. The ideal is that people are as close as possible, and we enable them to get together, to do offsites, to get on and off at least monthly together. But so it's not the same as a remote setup. But it's true that we hire remotely most of the times, whenever they are too far away. And sometimes they are sitting in a different place than the same office together. So in that sense, when having an amazingly big pipeline, you need to be extremely organized with your processes. So you have like more standardized processes, and then you train as well your interviewers, so that actually all of us were following up pretty much the same methodology, and we tried to get the same data points. It's what we call in Schibsted. In our interviews, we talk as well a lot about the culture that we have and how do we move together and how do we relate to each other even though we're sitting in different locations. An excellent example actually is the recruitment team, because up until now we were like 2 people in Barcelona, 2-3 people in London, 1 or 2 people in Oslo, and 1 people in Stockholm. And this is the typically diversified team where we got together talking and then agreeing on procedures so that all of us do the same thing in the different locations.
That's awesome. First time you mentioned the diversified concept, I kind of fall in love. And actually, as I've been telling you before, I've been using the term. I like it. Could you elaborate a little bit more on how those diversified teams work at the very beginning on Schibsted?
So basically, we don't want to be limited to the location of the employees. So up until now, the idea was to hire wherever it was possible that we had an office. So Schibsted was based in Oslo, and we had offices in Stockholm, so it made sense if we found the right person in the Norwegian countries or Sweden or Denmark, then moving to Sweden, for instance, to be able to relocate them to those countries, unless they wanted to go to any other place. Same with London. London has a potentiality of tech people, for instance, extremely good. We didn't want to lose that opportunity of hiring amazing talent there. But said that, we have been hiring a lot in Ukraine, Russia, for instance. And in those terms, regarding visas, we have been extremely flexible where they could relocate easier or what could be interesting in working, right?
That's awesome. And this is for both of you. And one of the things when hiring people and actually engaging in a teamwork kind of thing, but with people that is in different locations or they are completely distributed all over the planet, it comes to mind what happened with the culture of the company. How do you handle, or not handle, culture is not something you handle, is how do you ensure that the whole company is aligned with the culture? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that the most important thing that you can do to maintain the company culture when you're working in remote environments is leading by example. And this is what we do, what our managers at MarsBased does. This is the only way that we have found to make our employees know what are the core values of the company and apply them. And this is something that it starts with the decision-making process. The managers of MarsBased, once we need to take a decision, we have very clear the core principles of the company, and we try to make decisions based on that. I will give you an example of the early days of MarsBased. When we started the company, we used to work overtime. We used to do a lot less of vacations than we are doing now, because it's exciting, it's something new, you need to do it. But one of our core principles was that we wanted to have a good balance between work and life and family. And what we found out was that the employees at MarsBased were following what we were doing. They were doing less vacations than they should do. They were working overtime. And this is very dangerous for a remote team, because they can get demotivated, they can get burnt out, and at the end, they will leave your company. And it's very difficult to find top talent in some places like Barcelona or some areas like tech companies. So what we realized is that you not only need to have a good company culture, speech. Company culture is not something that you can write in a document and share with your employees. It is something that you need to practice. You need to practice what you preach to your employees. That way, they will respect you, and they will do the same and apply the same concepts while they are working, but also while they are communicating with your clients, which is what you really want, that everyone perceives you as the company that you are.
Awesome. Let me based on what Jos Xavier says, let me twist the question a little bit. Aligning those values within the culture of a company, it seems fairly easy when you can actually see each other face to face. But when you have these diversified teams, how do you manage to maybe lead by example? But how do you do that? How do you do in a company that is so spread out and probably working at different time zones with different schedules and different ways or lifestyles even? What are the key features, the key traits you can put in place to ensure that the culture is the one you want?
I would say this is not a process that you put in place. I think it starts with hiring, actually. So whenever you are hiring, whenever you are evaluating the people that you are going to bring into your team, you're already assessing the kind of behaviors that you want, and if you're aligning. So both in couchsurfing, where I was working remotely for a long while and hiring remote people all over the world, actually. It was what kind of behaviors did they have, how they could align to the company, and how do you see collaborating with these people. And these people that particularly put you a lot of problems or barriers or I cannot do this, I cannot do that, and they put blockers already. Yeah. You sense problem already. You need to investigate on that area. And those people who are easygoing, adapting, so there's a lot of traits that you can figure out, right? Yeah. The way of communication, respect, for instance. So you are already aligning with your values, and then at the same time, you see potentiality to adopt the working culture, actually. This together with gathering together. So what I learned in couchsurfing, I apply that in Schibsted, of course, and for me it's basic when hiring to already look for the things that, the traits that we need, so that we can build on top of that.
I like it. This reminds me of a couple of things. We hosted Ben Horowitz in our global conferences pretty often, by the way. And a couple of years ago, he was talking about cultural shift and changes inside the big, small, whatever size companies. And one of the things he mentioned is the way you make decisions is actually imprinting the culture way more than whatever perks you have. Hey, you have nice couches and you have free Wi-Fi or free lunch or whatever. Mm-hmm. Those are perks. Those are not the kind of things that are defining culture, but the way you make decisions. And that is super powerful. And let me jump into something we were talking about. I don't know if we can disclose this, but gathering people together from time to time, where you have these teams working all over the place. As much as you can disclose about your last experience with your team gathering, how was the experience? How was the overall experience? How do you perceive that? How the team actually work it out?
Okay, yes. What we do at MarsBased, because we're a fully remote team, is to have get-togethers every 2 months. Every 2 months, we bring all the team to Barcelona. We met in a co-working space, and we work on company-related projects, and we discuss what things we can improve about the company itself. And this is a good opportunity to see people face to face, and also to have this kind of relationship that can be missing in a remote communication, because we need to know that communicating in a remote way has its challenges, because sometimes you are lacking this verbal communication. Sometimes it is hard also to express what you are saying. People can feel alone in her workplaces, and having this kind of get-togethers helps you to have motivation boost. Also, what we do once a year also is a company retreat, which was something that it was suggested by one member of the team. It was not something that it was suggested by a manager at MarsBased. It was one member of the team that aligned with the values of the company, said, it will be very cool that every year we went to a place together and to be 1 week speaking about company-related stuff, how we can improve our company, how we can work together better, and also do some team building. And for example, this last year we went to Ireland. It was an amazing experience, and it happens that maybe it happened to you also at couchsurfing. When you're working with remote people and you met in person, it's like an amazing experience, because for example, in my personal experience, when I met my employees, I hugged them. I give them a huge hug, and this is something that it might seem crazy for you. Imagine that you go to your office tomorrow and you give a hug, yes, your boss. It's like crazy, but it is something that happens when you're always working remote and you see people face to face in person.
That's awesome. When you were at couchsurfing, how do you perceive this type of interaction? There were, I don't know, I'm not clueless, but there were some kind of gatherings or of the sort.
So when I started, it was in San Francisco. We were all living together in a house.
Okay.
Then we ended up moving remote, and we created, in a way, some sort of offices or hubs. So I remember at some point that there was one in Thailand, one in Malaysia, that's where I was, and another one in Bali. And whenever we had visa runs, we used to rotate. So we kept meeting. But during the office time, we used to have satellite international hubs. So we created one in Thailand in the mountains, or they had one in Costa Rica. And that was an opportunity for people to gather together for some months and work together in the same space. Yeah. So that was something that we did. And it was a similar experience to you, is that whenever you see the people that you're working together with, then you create some sort of like link that you didn't have probably before, and that's stronger than maybe meeting every day face-to-face and having a coffee, or not even in an office.
Maybe we are uncovering one of the unintended effects of working remotely. You cherish your personal face-to-face relationship a little bit more when you actually have them.
And you win loyalty.
Yeah.
And that's amazing as well, because people are more engaged and want to work even more with you. They participate more. And so loyalty and engagement, it's a boost, definitely.
And thanks for bringing that up. When you actually create that engagement, and that leads me to my next question is, how do you deal with performance? Because, yeah, I mean, you can be as cool as you can be, and all these gatherings are super good, and from the personal, emotional perspective are a boost. But how do you deal with performance with people all over the place?
Surfing, that's how it started in the beginning with me. I remember I had a lot of meetings with Casey, and I was not grasping the concept of those meetings. So he was asking me a lot of questions regarding HR, regarding recruitment, and I remember that he was taking notes, like in very graphic way. Casey Fenton, by the way, is the founder of Couchsurfing, and he was making graphs of what I was saying, and he was asking me, I don't know, funny questions, and I didn't understand. And once we went remote, I understood the whole concept. Yeah. It's extremely important when going remote to have a very organized structure of deliverables, of expectations, and if and how the process are defined are going to help you express what is the objective and the outcome. So in terms of recruitment, I had very strict goals in a way. So I needed to hire one role, and for this, I was going to revise the whole pipeline to 100 people. Yeah. I would be paid probably not by time, but by issue or by CV, for instance. Out of those, I needed to define 5 people for interviews, and I would have to schedule all the interviews with 4 members of the team. And then I had a wrap-up meeting with all the interviewers and myself to decide on that person, and then out of the 5, take a conclusion on 1. And this would be extremely structured, so that there would be no confusion about if and what should be paid or not. And for a remote team, it's very important to have not necessarily that structure, but to be structured so that expectations are very well defined, and then there is no mistakes in terms of understanding.
Yeah, that's good. And let's, in the same line of thought, from the more operational point of view, how do you measure performance from a developer? I mean, how do you actually track down a developer's work that is not working side by side with you?
Well, as we're a development consultancy, it is easy to see how our employees are performing, because you have the actual work that they are producing available to you to review it anytime. This is an asynchronous process. They produce their work in form of code, they are coding, and then you can review how they are writing this code, if it's of good quality. But we are not only evaluating the code that our developers are producing. We also like to evaluate their communication skills and how do they communicate things to our clients. And this is why, for example, we make a lot of check-ins with our clients to discuss how our developers are working with them, how is the communication, if they are meeting their expectations. And this is something that it may not happen in non-remote companies. Yes, you always speak with your clients, but we are very obsessed about speaking with our clients, having their feedback to our workers, because it's the only way that we can have to really assess that the work that our workers are performing is good and is of excellent quality. And I think that this is a great advantage of working that way because our clients at least appreciate it a lot.
I totally get that. I don't know if you know, probably you know the company called Pivotal Labs, and this was when I met them. This was the first time I've seen people coding in the same computer, one from the coding company and the other one from the customer, and say, is that even possible? So it was that the customer was there all the time. It was present. It was checking all those points. It was double checking everything. It was actually working together with the company, developing whatever piece of software. And they said, this is the magic. This is where it happens. This control loop is the one that is actually ensuring that we can deliver. And I find that super awesome. I think that smaller companies like MarsBased implementing this type of things is a good sign of performance, I guess. So let me jump into a more tricky part of this interview, which is training. How do you train people that are all over the planet, and how do you engage with them in a formal way of training, so to speak? What are your thoughts on that, Laura?
Obviously, you hired skilled people already. However, it's true that you need to bring them up to the company structure and ways of working, and even train them on whatever they need. If they are remote and they cannot move to the location, then probably it would do VC sessions, for instance.
Okay.
So in Schibsted, for instance, we have been holding a lot of video conferences, and whenever people was not able to move or time-wise didn't make any sense, and or otherwise bring everybody together to a training session somewhere and then do that.
Okay.
But to be honest, in Couchsurfing, we didn't have that many issues. So we had some ad hoc video conference trainings, but it was not as if we needed to bring up to speed to one person on hiring, for instance. Everybody came from hiring already.
Okay. I'm guessing you sort of self-trained yourself to keep up the pace or something like that.
In a way.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds good. How about in MarsBased? How do you deal with training?
Well, for us, this is a tough question because we're a small team and we are a distributed team. And what happens is that we cannot have a person responsible to do the whole mentoring. And this is one of the reasons why, for example, at MarsBased, we don't work with junior developers. We would like to do it because it's one great way to give back to the community, like being able to hire junior developers and train them. But we have tried in the past, and it hasn't worked. Why? Because I really believe that in order to train junior people, doing it in a remote way without having a person fully dedicated to the matter is very difficult. And this is something that we cannot do at the moment. But what we do is that as we are in a tech company and tech evolves so fast, there are lots of new technologies, new frameworks that they are appearing and that we want our employees to learn. And this is also training. What we do is to follow the same methodology that we do with work. What we do is to provide them with the right tools, for example, online courses that we know that have proven to be useful, and we give them also free time for them to work on these courses. So they are doing the training sessions in an independent way, but this is the way that we expect them to work also with the work for our clients. So it's the same as working, but working for self-training, and it has worked pretty well to us.
Once again, leading by example. I like that.
Yeah.
And we're going to take the last few minutes of this first chat talking about the future, doing a little bit of foresight. Where do you see the whole labor market is heading in terms of hiring and managing remote teams? Where do you see this in 10 years? How do you see the market evolving?
I know there's a new trend, which I learned about it short ago, and I find it impressive. And it's like a next week of remote working, which is, it seems that in the US at least, and in the future, we're going to tend to work for projects and to decide the amount of days we want to work per year. So we could perfectly decide that we want to work 4 hours a day on a project for 100 days a year, for instance.
Okay.
And then you take by project. So what I'm seeing is getting compartments of projects. So the work is going to be divided in small boxes, so to say, so that you can do that in different times and different places, and just delivering. So very much delivery-based, and I wouldn't say contracting necessarily, but I think that's the tendency to work for project.
Well, that's a good wishful thinking, I guess. How many developers are in the room? You please raise your hand. No developers? I cannot believe this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there you are. There we're asleep. Well, I guess for developers it's a little bit closer, because you already are, by definition, kind of decentralized yourself from the whole labor market.
Talking about tech, though.
Yeah, yes, of course. I mean, I cannot imagine well, I actually can. A doctor working remotely, that actually works. And how about you, Xavier? Where do you see this labor market going moving forward?
Well, what's I have experienced in the last years is that all the technology and all the tools have evolved a lot. For example, 5 years ago, we didn't have Slack, which is a chat communication tool that we're using at our company every day. And this has eased a lot the communication between our team. And we are seeing that there are more and more and more tools that we will be able to use to first test our candidates better and make our hiring process better. Like, for example, using techniques of machine learning based on the part of recruitment, but also in our day-to-day management, there are tools that allows you nowadays to not only share your screen, but share your code editor. So you can be coding together with another person with any friction, like if you were in the same Excel room. And this is something that is amazing. It's happening now. We are using it at MarsBased, and I can only imagine what will happen in future with the tools that we will have. It's just a matter of trying to keep on the loop and not being scared about new technologies.
I wanted to add something else, and I wanted to say 10 years ago I was working remotely, traveling around the world for Couchsurfing, and I did that for almost 3 years. And that was thanks to technology, and I'm not a tech person, even though I was working for a tech company. So I needed a tech company with a broad mind to be able to do that. But in those 10 years, it has evolved so much that actually so many other profiles are being able to work remote at the moment. Yeah. So the future as well, it is being open to different areas of work and sectors, not necessarily only tech.
Awesome. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Laura.